They called us gentle. That was their first mistake. Their second was saying it out loud, in chambers, while I was still in the room. My name is Kale Duran. I have served as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Accord for 11 years. In that time, I have shaken hands with beings who have 6 fingers, 4 eyes, and memories that stretch back 4,000 years. I have signed treaties in 17 languages, 3 of which have no written form. I have eaten food that would dissolve a human stomach and smiled through every bite. I am, by every measure, a diplomat, a peacemaker, a gentle representative of a gentle species. That is what they believe. That is what we let them believe. It was a Tuesday. We still counted by Earth days in the embassy, when Councillor Vreth of the Senvari hegemony rose from his seat at the Grand Accord table and made his proposal. His crest feathers were bright and fanned wide, the Senvari display of confidence. He spoke in the common galactic tongue, smooth and formal, and what he proposed was this: that humanity be officially reclassified as a protected, non-combatant species under Galactic Accord law. The same classification given to the Mealy, a herd species with no tools and no language. The same classification given to the Vorth coral builders, who could not leave their ocean. He was proposing to protect us the way you protect something that cannot protect itself. The chamber murmured in quiet agreement. Heads nodded, or the alien equivalent of nodding, which for the Keth was a slow blinking of their outer eyelids. The Drell delegates, ancient and silver-robed, exchanged what I can only describe as fond looks. They thought it was a kind gesture. They thought we would be grateful. I set down my water glass very slowly. I folded my hands on the table. I smiled, and I asked permission to speak. Vreth granted it graciously, gesturing toward me with an open palm, the way you might invite a child to share a drawing they had made. I thanked him. I thanked the entire council, and then I began. I told them they were right. Humans had not started a single war in over 200 years of galactic membership. Our vessels carried more medical supplies than weapons. Our colony ships were followed by construction fleets that built schools and water systems on border worlds, still recovering from conflicts that had nothing to do with us. We spent more on refugee transport than on our entire defensive fleet. Every word of it was true. I watched Vreth nod. I watched the Keth delegates relax, their outer eyelids sliding back to their resting position. I watched the room settle into the comfortable shape of a speech they already knew the ending of. A humble, grateful human, accepting a kind gesture with quiet dignity. I let them have that feeling for exactly 10 more seconds. Then I told them what the word peaceful actually means when a human uses it. It does not mean the absence of violence. Every species in that chamber had never started a war because they lacked the capability, the organization, or the will. The Drell were ancient and wise and had not fought in 2,000 years because they had evolved beyond it. Their biology, slowly quieting the old instincts over millennia. The Keth had never waged war because their hive structure made individual aggression chemically impossible. The Senvari had not fought in 4 centuries because their last war nearly ended them, and the memory was written into their culture like a wound that never fully closed. Human peace was different. Human peace was a choice, made every day, by every generation, against every instinct we still carried in our blood. I told them about the old history, not the version in the Galactic Archives, which we had submitted carefully, with context and framing, and a great deal of thoughtful editing. The real history, the one we teach our children in full, without softening, because we believe they need to know exactly what they are capable of. I told them about a century we called the 20th, when human civilization very nearly destroyed itself, not once, but twice in the span of 30 years. When we built weapons powerful enough to end all life on our planet and then pointed them at each other and held them there for decades, each side daring the other to move first. I described it the way a geologist describes a fault line, not with drama, but with precision. Here is the pressure. Here is where it nearly broke. The chamber was quieter now. Vreth's crest feathers had begun, slowly, to flatten. The Drell xenobiologist, a female called Sareth, who had always spoken to me with the particular patience one reserves for promising students, raised her hand and said, "But surely those were different humans." Earlier humans. Less developed, less. I stopped her with a single word. Gently but completely. No, I said. Same genome. Same brain structure. Same cortex. Same chemistry. Same capacity for every single thing I had just described. The humans who built the first nuclear weapon, and the humans sitting in embassies across the galaxy right now, are, biologically, the same animal. We did not evolve our way out of what we were. We decided our way out of it. Every morning, collectively, as a species, we decide again. Sarath did not speak again for the rest of the session. I moved on. I told them about an event they all knew, or thought they knew, called the Silence of Year 409. A 14-month communications blackout from the human colony on Calder's Reach, a mid-rim world with a population of about 80,000. The galactic record listed the cause as an infrastructure failure, a deep space relay collapse, compounded by solar interference. It was a reasonable explanation. No one had looked further. What actually happened was this. A raider syndicate, operating under the financial backing of 3 Outer Rim interests, one of which had, at the time, close trade ties with a Keth-allied nation, destroyed 2 colony transports and 1 medical vessel in the Calder corridor. Combined civilian deaths, 41,312 people. Women, children, engineers, teachers, a choir traveling to perform at a new settlement's founding ceremony. The Accord was not informed. Earth's government made that decision in the first 48 hours. During those 14 months of silence, while the galactic community assumed our communications were down, the entirety of that raider network ceased to exist. Every installation, every vessel, every financial record, every supply chain, every person in a position of command, the 3 Outer Rim interests that had funded them discovered, over the course of about 6 months, that their assets had been frozen, their shipping lanes had developed inexplicable difficulties, and several of their senior figures had retired suddenly and permanently from public life. No announcements, no demands, no speeches. When our communications came back online, we reported the relay failure had been repaired. We expressed our condolences at the delay. We resumed our seat at the table. We went back to building hospitals. The chamber was completely silent, the kind of silence that has weight. I could hear the environmental systems in the ceiling, the faint hum of the translation field generators in the walls. Vreth's crest feathers were flat against his skull. His hands, I noticed, were very still. I want to be clear about something, I said. I was not telling this story to frighten anyone. I was telling it because the proposal on the table, the reclassification proposal, the protected species proposal, the well-meaning, genuinely kind proposal, was built on a misunderstanding so fundamental that allowing it to stand would be doing a disservice to every species in this room. The misunderstanding was this, that humanity's peace was a condition, something that had happened to us, like a climate, like a trait, something we had grown into, the way a species might slowly grow a shell or lose a tooth, something that made us, inherently, non-threatening. We are not non-threatening. We are restrained. Those are not the same thing. A river is not non-threatening. A river that has been dammed and managed and whose flow has been directed by the patient, constant work of 10,000 engineers over 100 years. That river is restrained. The water is the same water. The force is the same force. A young Keth delegate, I learned later his name was Resh, and that he was among the youngest members ever appointed to the Accord, raised his secondary arm, which among the Keth signals a question of protocol. His voice, when he spoke, was not quite steady. He asked whether what I was saying constituted a threat. I looked at him. I looked at him the way you look at someone you genuinely want to give the correct answer to. Because the correct answer matters, and they deserve to hear it clearly. No, I said. What I am saying is the reason no one has ever needed to threaten you. Because we have been in the room. I let that sit for a moment, and then I continued. I told them about human military philosophy, the actual doctrine, not the version available in public galactic databases. We do not build our defenses to win. Any species with enough resources can build to win. We build so that the concept of winning becomes, in any conflict with humanity, an irrelevant category. We build until the only available outcome for any aggressor is a cost so complete, so total, and so permanent, that no strategic calculus in the universe can justify beginning. And then, and this is the part that I think they found most difficult to understand, we spend the majority of our resources making sure no one ever needs to find out if we are telling the truth. Most of our budget goes to hospitals, to schools, to the kind of deep, structural generosity that makes other species believe we are soft. We cultivate that belief the way a farmer cultivates a field, deliberately, patiently, with full understanding of what the harvest is for. We want the galaxy to think of us as healers. We want to be healers. We are healers, and we can build a weapon that has no name in any language currently spoken in this chamber. And we keep those two things in our hands simultaneously, and we have done so for 200 years without dropping either one. That is not gentleness. That is the hardest thing I have ever seen any civilization do. I told them about my grandmother, who was a doctor on a border world for 30 years, and who kept, in the drawer of her desk, a single photograph of what that border world had looked like before she arrived. She kept it not as a reminder of progress, but as a reminder of what progress costs. She kept it because she believed that comfort was the enemy of care, that if you forgot what suffering looked like, you would eventually stop working quite so hard to prevent it. Every human I know carries something like that photograph, not literally, but in the way we tell our history, in the way we teach our children. We do not give them a clean version of what we were. We give them the full version, and we say, this is you, this is what you contain. Now decide, every day, what to do with it. The Drell elder who had been seated at the far end of the table, her name was Elarath, and she had lived through 4 galactic administrations, which made her approximately 900 years old by human reckoning, had not moved during my entire address. She sat with the perfect stillness that very old beings sometimes have, like something that has learned to be more patient than time itself. When I finished, she was the first to speak. She did not ask a question, she made an observation. She said that she had spent 300 years studying young species in their first or second centuries of galactic participation, and that in all that time, she had never encountered one that carried its own history the way humans did. Most species, she said, resolved their difficult past in one of 2 ways. They buried it, sealed it in cultural silence, and built their identity on top of the burial. Or they were broken by it, and arrived at the galactic table diminished, still bleeding from wounds they had not yet closed. Humans, she said, had done neither. We had looked at the worst of ourselves, and used it as a foundation, not to build pride on, but to build responsibility on. She paused, then she said that she owed me an apology, not on behalf of the council, personally. She said that she had believed for the 11 years of my appointment that I was a fundamentally peaceful man. She said she understood now that she had been describing the effect, not the cause, and that the distinction mattered. I thanked her. I meant it completely. Councillor Vreth withdrew the reclassification proposal before the session formally closed. The record notes it was tabled for further review. It has not come back. It will not come back. In the corridor outside the chamber, Elarath caught me by the arm. Her grip was light but certain, the grip of someone who has touched a great many things and knows exactly how much pressure each one requires. She looked at me for a long time with all 4 of her eyes, and then she said, "We always wondered why your ships carry no visible weapons." I smiled at her. I said, "They're not invisible. You have simply never needed to look." She released my arm. She walked away without another word, and I stood there in the corridor, listening to the sound of the Accord's ventilation systems, and thinking about my grandmother's photograph. The galaxy did not fear us that day. Not exactly. Fear is what you feel towards something you do not understand. What they felt, what I saw move across the chamber like a slow tide, was something older and more complicated. It was the particular feeling that comes when you realize the ground you have been standing on was never quite as ordinary as you believed. We are peaceful. I want to be clear about that. I am not telling this story to suggest otherwise. Every hospital we have built is real. Every treaty we have signed, we have honored. Every refugee we have carried to safety, we carried with care. But peace is not what we are. Peace is what we choose. Every single day, in 10,000 small decisions and a few enormous ones, we choose it. We choose it knowing exactly what the other option looks like, because we have seen it, we have done it, we have stared at the photographs and learned every one of the names. That is not gentleness, that is will. And the ones who are wise, the very old ones, like Elarath, who have seen enough of the universe to know the difference, they understood, from that day forward, that standing beside a species with that kind of will was the safest place in the galaxy to be, as long as you were standing beside us and not in front of us.